Hey guys, welcome to That Florida Feeling. How's everybody doing? Officially happy Halloween, happy Samhain, and for those of you tomorrow, happy Dia de los Muertos. I hope that you guys have enjoyed some spooky times through the month. I know that we've not touched on the haunted St. Augustine this year, and we will not. I feel like you guys have heard that enough from me for right now, but I do have one last really haunted place for us to talk about today. First, I want to say thank you to everybody who's interacted with the social media accounts. I appreciate it. Love you guys. Thank you so much, especially for the comments and the shares. If you have a second, a 5-star review is appreciated. But let's talk about a very, very haunted part of Florida. Now, what would you say if you walked into a place and you had an amazing view, had a beautiful view, could see trees, ocean, shoreline, but you just kept feeling like you weren't alone, even though you know you walked there alone and you did a solo trip and you don't hear anybody, you don't see anybody, but you just can't escape the feeling of someone watching you. Kind of creepy, isn't it? Well, then don't go to Pensacola Lighthouse, because that's exactly what happens. Today we are going to talk about the Pensacola Lighthouse. I have actually been, and it does have some really amazing views. And what I just told you really did happen to me. Beautiful, beautiful views. Great place. Really, really historical. Really, really haunted. So let's get into the history of the lighthouse and maybe figure out why it's so haunted. Now, of course, let's just start. The Pensacola Lighthouse does sit in Pensacola off of Radford Boulevard. You can visit it. It is located in Naval Air Station, Pensacola. It actually does still actively aid to navigation. So this is a complete working, true maritime lighthouse. And it does have a great exhibit. There's actually like a museum you can go to and some really cool exhibits to tell you the history of the lighthouse. In fact, they even actually put on exhibit the first Frenzel lens. And it is actually only one of 6 early classic brick lighthouses still. So this lighthouse has some history, which kind of might explain why it's actually haunted. To be exact, Pensacola is actually the site of the first European settlement in America in 1559, predating St. Augustine. And the lighthouse has unique exhibits from the early indigenous people who were there before the Spanish. It also talks about pretty much the entire history of the lighthouse from the very first one built to the one that we see now. So it's probably no surprise that it's got a little bit of a history. I mean, when I went, it was beautiful. It was great. Literally the greatest views ever, especially of that area. But, you know, it's been around a while. To be exact, the first Pensacola Lighthouse was lightship Aurora Borealis. And it was moved to Pensacola in 1823. It was actually originally at the mouth of the Mississippi, but because of frequent rough seas, the lighthouse had to be anchored inside the bay, and they chose Pensacola Bay. They chose it right behind Santa Rosa Island. And the problem really was that it couldn't really be seen. So, you know, that's kind of a problem. Got to do something about that. So in 1825, a 40-foot tower was built on a 40-foot bluff at the south entrance of Pensacola Bay. Unfortunately, the light was also partially obscured by trees close to the tower on Santa Rosa Island. So that lighthouse stood for about 30 years. And then in 1858, a new tower was built on the north side of the bay entrance, and it was officially lit on January 1st, 1859. That is the new and current tower that you see today. It is 150 feet tall. It still sits on a 40-foot bluff, and it is located in Pensacola Naval Air Station. It actually places the light 190 feet above sea level. The new location actually allowed the tower to serve as a rear range light marker for the passage across Pensacola Bar. Little is really known of the first front light that was there, but you know, history gets lost. In 1879, a new front range beacon was erected 448 feet southeast of the lighthouse, and the light was known as the Pensacola Bar Beacon. It was a square pyramidal wooden tower. Remember, this is 1879. And it set 29 feet above sea level, so that the light was 55 feet above the water. It actually had a 6th order Fresnel lens that showed a fixed white light visible for up to 11 miles on a clear night. Unfortunately, though, the Pensacola Bar Beacon was removed from service and demolished around 1900, while the Pensacola Lighthouse still stands today. And the Pensacola Lighthouse has seen a lot of history, a lot of sadness. It was actually involved in the Civil War. At the start of the Civil War, Pensacola was originally controlled by Confederate forces, and I do talk about this in my Pensacola episodes. There's 2 of them. And Pensacola was a Confederate stronghold. While Fort Pickens across the bay, so if you've ever been to Pensacola, you see the lighthouse, and then across the bay there's Fort Pickens. It was actually in Union hands. Confederate authorities got kind of devious, and they actually removed the lens from the lighthouse as well as most of its supplies to kind of stop the use of it if it fell into Union hands. Well, in 1861, an artillery duel between the 2 forces actually damaged the lighthouse tower. Didn't fall, but it did do some severe damage. The Confederates actually held Pensacola and its lighthouses until about 1863, so about 2 years-ish. The Union forces actually took it over, and they ordered a 4th order Fresnel lens to replace the one that the Confederates had taken to relight the lighthouse. And it was relit. They ordered another one after the war in 1869 and gave the tower a little bit of an upgrade. During the Civil War, the tower was completely white. Like, as you know today, it's two-tone, but it was completely white. Later, the upper 2/3 of the tower was painted black, and electricity was eventually introduced in 1939, eliminating the need to rewind the light rotation clocks every 4.5 hours. The lighthouse was fully automated in 1965. The lighthouse, its tower, associated buildings are all on the Historic Register of, or National Register of Historic Places. I don't know why it always messes me up to say that, the National Register, because there's like too many words there. Anyways, it was officially placed in 1974. In 1989, the lighthouse and keeper's quarters were actually listed on a guide to Florida's historic architecture. So it is a very monumental building, and it holds a lot of history. Like I said, today it does remain in activated navigation, and the Coast Guard Auxiliary Flotilla 17 has actually provided tours of the lighthouse up until 2007. It is open for public tours 7 days a week, so you can go. The Pensacola Lighthouse Association actually currently operates all maintenance and tours on the lighthouse, even though it is on the Naval Air Station. The 1869 keeper's quarters that are adjacent to the tower is now home to the museum that you can go to see all these artifacts, and a gift shop that is again administered by the Pensacola Lighthouse Association, which is a nonprofit, small staff, volunteer-based group that actually runs the lighthouse. And it's really cool. Everybody was really nice. They have a great presentation there. But they're not going to be the only people that you see roaming these grounds. So why is it so haunted? And what is haunting it? Well, visitors have reported apparitions, hearing footsteps up the tower, hearing voices, being touched, getting their hair grabbed. I heard the voices and the footsteps. I'm not going to lie to you guys. And a lot of people think that it started with the former lighthouse, Jeremiah Ingram, Sam Lawrence, and a woman named Eliza Miller who died in childbirth on the actual grounds. There were also 2 other deaths of children, Joey and Lizzie, who died from yellow fever. So let's really talk about these people. Who are they? Why are they still there? So I have realized that with lighthouses, the people who do these jobs back then where they had to carry the oil all the way up those steps and had to keep it running and had to keep it lit and had to, if there was a storm, you were stuck there, which could have been the safest place, who knows. But I have learned that these people were very passionate about their jobs. And if you find a lighthouse that's not haunted, I don't believe it. So I'm not surprised to say that the Pensacola Lighthouse is deeply, deeply haunted. It could start possibly with the fact that the Spanish were there in 1559 and the settlement did not go well. In fact, it ended in hurricanes. Or the fact that the indigenous people were on the land first. We don't know really what happened there. But to say that the lighthouse is slightly haunted is an understatement based on just the amount of ghosts that people have seen walking these grounds. Now, the first one really we're going to talk about is the first lightkeeper, and that's Jeremiah Ingram. Jeremiah Ingram was the first lighthouse for Pensacola. He was very much dedicated and devoted to his work. He kept it running. He kept it every day. But what's really interesting is that his wife also really kind of got in on running the lighthouse and learning what to do and keeping it lit. And Jeremiah Ingram became the lighthouse keeper in 1824. And Ingram was, devoted to his work, but he did marry his wife, Michaela, and she's the one that really got into learning how to run the lighthouse, what to do, how to use it, what the oil is, just everything about the light. Like, she wanted to learn, which is cool. But they also did have 3 children at the station that they raised together. Now, Jeremiah passed away in 1840. There's a lot of controversy about him passing away. And the reason is because a lot of people don't think that he just died in his sleep. In fact, there's evidence that he didn't. Reportedly, he was actually stabbed to death by his wife in 1840. We don't know. We can't confirm that. We don't know, obviously if they actually had a marital dispute or what. But it's really heavily thought that Michaela stabbed Jeremiah to death in the lightkeeper's house. But after he died, she just took over. And she served as the actual lightkeeper operator until her own death in 1855. There was also the fact that the rotation did fail on the lighthouse around the time that Jeremiah passed away. So sometime in the 1840s, it said. And 2 men were hired to turn the lamp by hand until repairs could be made. A lot of people say that these 2 men were forced to do hard labor without reimbursement, or that Michaela was very mean to them. So we have Jeremiah, who possibly was stabbed to death, who loved his work, and he is actually said to be seen there a lot. He's one of the main ghosts that you hear about, because people say that he's the one still doing his work, still walking up and down the tower. I mean, I could believe that. Like I said, you never hear about lighthouse keepers just going on. A lot of them are deeply, deeply dedicated to their work. And I don't think that that's any exception here, especially if he was stabbed to death by his wife, which is kind of insane. But he's not the only one. Michaela is actually still seen as well roaming the lighthouse. She's still said to be seen in her dress going into the lighthouse to do her daily work. Okay, I mean, again, he was really passionate about it. She was really passionate about it. Okay, that's fine. Like, that's, okay, you love your work. It's kind of like theaters. I don't think any theater is not haunted. So, by the time that she died in 1855, a couple years later, that's when the new lighthouse was supposed to be constructed. That was about 1858, and it was officially lit on 1859. A lot of people say that the land they chose, that bluff, is cursed, and a lot of people consider this one to be unlucky. I don't know about that, but that's just what a lot of people are reported. So once the new lighthouse got lit and everything is going on, everything's fine. The Civil War hit. That's when the Union basically stole all this, or the Confederates took the stuff out, stole it out of the lighthouse, so that if the Union got it, it didn't sit in their hands. They couldn't use it. But the next really bad turn for the lighthouse is a little bit is during the Reconstruction era, a little bit after the Civil War. And you're talking 1863 to 1886. Okay, so 23 years. 9 lightkeepers were removed from duty for various reasons that range from intoxication on the job to absolute total neglect of the lighthouse. And of course, during this, a lot of strange things were said to happen. And this is where people really get the thing that, oh, this place is really unlucky. In 1875, the lighthouse was struck twice in the same year, suffering extensive damage both times. In 1885, a large flock of wild ducks basically committed suicide by flying through the lens room. And then a year later, a very, very rare earthquake hit and damaged the lighthouse. So I get why they kind of say it's unlucky, and all this just kind of only adds to the haunted lore. Well, they finally found a keeper that's going to stay. Samuel Lawrence. Samuel Lawrence serves as lightkeeper from 1877 to 1885. And he is famous, but not for the reasons you think. He's actually the most famous ghost in the tower. He loves his work again, much like Jeremiah and Michaela, that he stayed. Guides actually often see him peering out of the tallest tower window. And his spirit is also known to grab tourists about halfway up the climb as they're climbing up the 177 steps. He is actually a well-known ghost. He is a former keeper who's said to often be seen in the tower and likes to interact with visitors. Okay. Again, someone who loved his work enough that he didn't want to leave. After Samuel Lawrence got done being a lightkeeper, in the late 1800s, a family man named George Tucker Clifford became the next lighthouse keeper, and he raised his daughter Ellen on the property. Ellen loves the property, and Ellen married a man named Ernest Mueller, and Ellen, of course, had a baby. She had a daughter, Naomi, but Naomi was fine, but Ellen actually died 5 months after Naomi was born due to complications from childbirth. And this is where you get the Bloody Bedroom. The Bloody Bedroom is a well-known place in the lighthouse keeper's quarters. The room is the one where a woman, they say she died during childbirth. It was a couple months after due to the complications. But it is the Bloody Bedroom. And there's also the ghost of a little girl that haunts the Bloody Bedroom. So this kind of only adds to it. You can actually hear this woman. I don't know if it's Ella or Ellen. I've seen both, but Miss Miller. You can hear her. You can actually hear her sometimes walking around, acting like she's in childbirth. There's also a blood stain on the floor of the Bloody Bedroom, and it is sometimes attributed to her. We don't really know for sure, but it only adds to the creepiness of the lighthouse. Now, Naomi was raised by her grandparents, but always had a sense that her mother was nearby watching over. And this is the same room where they see the small child playing. So we don't know if Naomi went back as a ghost or if someone possibly not reported another death. Another thing in the lighthouse that is said to be really, really haunted is the basement. In the basement of the lighthouse lives Thomas. Thomas is a former slave that was a very large man. They say he was about 7 feet tall. Thomas is said to haunt the basement. Raymond is also said to haunt that area. He lives under the stairs. Neither of these ghosts seem malevolent, but they do creep out guests and staff members. Staff members have reported it. So it's not really surprising so far that this is considered one of the most haunted places in Florida. And Raymond and Thomas were both obviously slaves. They lived in the basement, but they were said to also be hanged and buried on the property. We don't know if that's completely accurate, but that may be why they live in the basement, and that may be why they never left. Thomas is said to be seen like an actual full body apparition, and they know it's Thomas because he was really tall in real life, and he's still really tall as a ghost. He can be seen lingering around the basement. People will say they often see him out of the corner of their eye. So, like, this is just adding to it. Like, kind of sounds like some St. Augustine stuff. I'm not going to lie to you guys. I didn't feel anything when I went in the museum or the basement, but it could have just been that maybe Thomas and Raymond didn't want to talk that day. Another 2 spirits that roam the property are 2 children who died from yellow fever in 1922, Joey and Lizzie, and they are usually seen as full-bodied apparitions. Many people have said that they've seen children wandering about without parents. Most people attribute this to Joey and Lizzie. Again, people see apparitions all the time. Shadow figures, mostly attributed to Thomas and Raymond. Other visual phenomenon, as in seeing something out of the corner of your eye or seeing maybe a child that's not there or a person that's not there. They also hear voices, footsteps, unexplained banging. Again, they feel touches, cold spots, and hair being grabbed. Most of this attributed to Sam Lawrence, the housekeeper who either likes to have fun or doesn't like people. You also will get extreme feelings of dread or intense energy. And that's really in parts of the lighthouse, keeper's quarters, not the lighthouse itself, but the keeper's quarters. And then supposedly around the tree that they think Raymond is believed to be buried. And a lot of people have actually actively investigated this lighthouse, like well-known groups. I know TAPS investigated it. I know a lot of local Florida people have investigated it, and you can find a lot of it on YouTube. But the Pensacola Lighthouse actually actively gives ghost tours as well. They lean into their history, which I think is great. They do have a notice. If you're going to do it, you have to go to a certain spot and a shuttle bus will pick you up. Because you can't get on the base after hours if you don't have a military ID. You have to wear certain kind of shoes. You have to, it's really cool that these people actively lean into the idea that some of these people never left. Some of these people still actually visit and work daily, like Michaela or Jeremiah or Samuel. And then there's the sadder ghosts, such as Raymond and Thomas, who didn't get to live their full life the way they should have. But the Pensacola Lighthouse is definitely one of the more haunted places in Florida. I didn't get bad feelings. Like I heard things, but you can attribute that to maybe somebody at the very bottom clanging on the stairs, or I didn't get any bad energy. But like I said, maybe the ghosts weren't feeling it that day. But there is so many reported hauntings from just this lighthouse, and so many people actually will go and end up experiencing something and not realize what it is. In fact, if you go to TripAdvisor, you can actually find a couple people talking about the hauntings. it's really interesting. Like, this is a well-known thing, and this is something that they have just embraced. And I for one think that's great. I think it's great that they just understand that there was a history there long before them, and that they're still going to keep it alive. Another cool thing about the lighthouse, though, is between March and November, they do Blue Angel shows every Tuesday and Wednesday. They're centered over the lighthouse tower, which basically means that when the angels fly by, you can see them if you're at the top, which I think is really great too. Again, this place is absolutely full of history, starting from 1559 and going all the way to the very first lighthouse, to the current lighthouse that we have today. You know, some ghosts just never want to leave. Some people enjoy it. But if you're in Pensacola and you are looking for something a little spooky or something a little historic, definitely check out the lighthouse. The views are amazing. The education is definitely there. And it's just something great to do, to be able to see the surrounding area from a view that you didn't think you ever would. Of course, wear closed-toed shoes. Be prepared. You're climbing a lot of steps. You know, be ready. You will be out in the sun. Wear sunscreen. Just really hope that you don't run into Florida Man while you're there. You know, he's in every corner of the state, guys. Today's Florida Man actually comes from Palm Beach County. One guy apparently indulged in a trippy Halloween. I'm not even going to call it like his normal thing. He just decided to climb on his roof and act maniacally in front of children, and ran around with a shotgun and fired it off on the street. So yeah, this man, who was identified as Daniel Terry, started showing erratic behavior. They said that Terry had taken some mushrooms, drank a large amount of alcohol, and decided to climb on his roof. It was reported by a lot of the neighbors that he was a danger to the children in the home and around the area, because it's Halloween. People are trick-or-treating. They found him. They found him going through the windows of the house. By the time they got there, he wasn't on the roof anymore. They found him moving erratically through the house and carrying a shotgun. So, yeah, don't do drugs, y'all. Don't decide to do them on Halloween when there's a bunch of kids roaming around. And don't drink a lot of alcohol while doing drugs. Just saying, everything in moderation, guys. I do hope that you have enjoyed learning about spooky Florida. I do enjoy doing these every year. So if anybody has suggestions, even starting now for next year, or if you want to hear a suggestion in general about a part of Florida that I may not have thought of yet, please just drop me an email at thatfloridafeel@gmail.com. Or put it on one of the social media sites, guys. I love interacting with y'all. I do hope that everybody has a safe Halloween, or happy Samhain, or again, happy Dia de los Muertos for tomorrow. Thank you so much for listening, guys. I truly hope you've enjoyed learning about Haunted Pensacola, or at least the lighthouse. I did do a Haunted Pensacola episode last year, so if you do want to hear more about Pensacola, just check that out from my library. And I guess we're preparing for Thanksgiving now. All right, guys, drink your water, wear your sunscreen, don't be rude to each other. We have plenty of all that going on. Be better. And that's your daily dose of sunshine.
This podcast is a production of Unfiltered Studios. If you would like to know more about joining Unfiltered Studios, please visit our website at unfpod.com for more information.